Now let me start with the IDAC. All right. This, as mentioned by DG in his speech, the Labuan aspires to be the gateway for Islamic Digital Asset Center, or IDAC, for Asia and also the world. I want to add that, and also the world, not just Asia, but also the world. That's what our target is. Yeah. Also mentioned by Puan Doreen, IDAC initiative is the commitment made by Labuan FSA, which is embroiled and embedded in the 5-year roadmap, 2022 to 2026, to make Labuan IBFC as the digital gateway with Islamic finance capabilities for all types of global investors and players. So here clearly we show the slides that it is a fundraising and investment hub, okay, in digital space with a niche of ESG and Shariah compliant activities. Okay, IDAC will focus on leveraging cutting-edge technology such as blockchain, for example, as what DG mentioned, tokenizing sukuk, or bond for that matter, takaful tech, expanding the range of products and services, as well as serving the underserved by creating a digitally ummah linked company in order to achieve the maqasid of Shariah, or the objectives of Shariah. Right? So in IDAC context, Labuan FSA has licensed and will be licensing more digital players providing the above mentioned services. Okay, as achieved by the sukuk market, RAMs can be an instrument to be issued by both the government and the private, the sovereign GLCs and whatnot. So apart from tokenizing their sukuk, their existing sukuk, RAMs can be issued, for example, by government to fund their project or to fund the country. Okay, just like last time they were saying to issue a GDP-based sukuk, where a nation can issue a sukuk where the sukuk paid based on the GDP of the country. The same thing we can do for RAMs, whereby we can issue a RAM-based sukuk. A country can issue a RAM-based sukuk where the payment will be based, the payment of the RAMs will be based on the dividend based on the GDP of the country. And it will be subscribed by the people of the country. Therefore, the country and the people will work together to develop the country. This is something that we want to do and to do, inshallah. All right. As for the private sector, we will be listening from our speaker later. But apart from that, we are also looking in developing, say, RAMs that on wakaf, because lots of wakaf globally, there's a lot of unproductive land. So we can use RAMs basically to develop the wakaf land. So we will be talking to a lot of religious agencies to do this, to achieve this objective. For example, the wakaf land can be developed for example, food industry, affordable homes, hospitals, and any other related productive activities. Okay, let's go to the next slide. This basically portrays example of how IDAC can be a tool to provide a DeFi, that's decentralized finance linkages among the people in the world, especially the Muslim communities or the Ummah. Here we can see, for example, a farmer in West Java wishes to expand his farm and issue RAMs, and these RAMs will be purchased, say, by an investor, a Turkish corporate trader, you know. So this basically gives the connectivity, all right, from an issuer in Indonesia to investors in, say, Turkey, right? Or, for example, a Muslim expatriate in Norway who wishes to conduct his Islamic social finance activity, such as savings for Hajj, for pension, for payment of zakat, or to perform his or her wakaf, can do so via a Ummah linked company utilizing blockchain technologies. All right. So the potentials of IDAC is limitless. All right. So what depends on us, for us to move the ideas and develop it accordingly for the benefits of Ummah and the world as a whole. All right. All right. Now, I think enough from my side. So let's go to the speaker. So there is a saying that the root determines the fruit. So before we proceed further, let us listen from Dr. Akram on what are the Sharia views and perspectives on digital market, digital space, digital assets. So Dr. Tafaddal.
Okay, thank you. A'udhu billahi samil alim minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Allahumma la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Allahumma la sahla illa ma ja'altahu sahla wa anta taj'alul hazna wa sa'ba in syi'ta sahla. Ayyuhal akhwatil kiram, uhayyikum bi tahiyatil Islam. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And a very good morning. Thank you, Brother Jafar, distinguished guests, my panelists, and ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Labuan IBFC for this wonderful event and also inviting me to share my thoughts on the Sharia aspect related to IDAC. And I would like to congratulate Labuan IBFC as well. You see, on this, I think, very noble initiative that they are taking, to focus on the Islamic digital asset, to make Labuan IBFC as the Islamic Digital Asset Center, in which I think this is, the move, the right, move or future direction. Because if you look into the development at the global level, I think everyone is competing to be the hub for Islamic finance, right? And I think I have always, have this thought that perhaps, the best thing is that, different jurisdiction will have a particular niche area in which they focus on, you see, rather than competing with each other, right? Coming back to the topic that we have today on the Islamic digital assets, perhaps, from the Sharia point of view, I would like to begin in saying that the dynamic of Sharia, have always showed us that Sharia have the solution of each and every issues, each and every innovation that we have. Brother Jafar was mentioning about rams. Okay, rams. The right word is rams. You see, rams. It is taken from the Arabic word ra mim zal. You see, meaning symbol, right? That is the root word in Arabic, and it is pronounced in Arabic as rams. Okay, so that is the right pronunciation. So I believe that rams is an innovation, you see, in which we are integrating this concept within the financial instrument that we have nowadays, you see, in order to connect the issuer as well as the investors and those on the ground who are in need of funding in order for them to come up, you see, with innovative products. And this, this kind of innovation, we always have the Sharia principle that we can use, and we always have the Sharia guideline. So don't worry about the Sharia aspect. Don't have this in back of your mind, because some people might have this at the back of their mind that, you see, Sharia is always a hindrance for me to undertake certain initiative. No, please, eradicate this from your mind, because we always have the solution. And when it comes, you see, to the principle of Sharia, the principle that we use here, or the qa'idah that we use here, is al-aslu fil asya al-ibaha. This is a principle which is agreed by majority of the scholars, and this is the foundation that we are using now in developing Islamic financial product, which means that originally, you see, in Sharia, originally everything is permissible. That is the basis. It is permissible unless if there is any indication showing otherwise. Okay, so that is the premise. So when it comes to technological development, we have seen that a lot of you see, perhaps in the past decade, we have seen a lot of technological development that have taken place. You talk about blockchain. Blockchain is the tool that is being used, and you can empower it by so many products. You have cryptos. I think perhaps now maybe more than 1,000 type of cryptos is there in the market with different features. You see, all this, there are the Sharia solution for all this on the basis of what I have mentioned earlier on, that thinks it is everything is permissible unless there is any indication showing otherwise. Okay, I mean the second principle that I would like to emphasize here is that, you see, Jafar was mentioning about the objective of Shariah. I mean, this is a very popular term which is being popularized nowadays. That is the fulfilling the maqasid of Shariah, or the objective of Shariah. Our great scholars, Imam Ibn Ashur, you see, Imam Al-Ghazali and whatnot, I mean, they have put the foundation in which they said that the objective of Shariah is to ensure that we do what is beneficial to mankind and eradicate what is harmful. Very broad principle. Of course, I mean, all this is guided by the Quran as well as the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when we talk about technology, right, anything that will bring benefit, it is in line with the objective of Shariah. Anything that will prevent harm, it is in line with the objective of Shariah. That's why I always mention that for me, technology is neutral. I disagree with people calling, I mean, putting the word Islamic, you see, except, I mean, for marketing purposes, yes, you can do that. You see, when you talk about blockchain, let's say, you see, you don't have to put Islamic blockchain or what. I mean, technology is technology. It is how you empower the technology. How do you use the technology? It can be used for beneficial purposes. It can be used for otherwise. I mean, people abuse nowadays. I mean, there are a lot of scams, you see, in which they are using technology to scam people, right? I mean, they are misusing the technology. I mean, this is, of course, against the principle of Shariah. So it is important. You see, when it comes to digital asset, we are developing a digital asset in whatever form it is. You see, the other principle that I would like to mention here when it comes to digital asset, from the Sharia point of view, when we talk about asset, it might be tangible, it might be intangible. Okay? Take for example, I mean, tangible asset, I think most of us, we know. You see, you have buildings, I mean, you have, this usual type of asset that we have. I mean, that is tangible asset that can generate income. It is very much Sharia compliant generally. You see, I mean, sometimes, I mean, you might have intangible asset, but has its own usufruct, has its own feature, you see, in which it is also valuable. I give an example like airtime. Okay, airtime is not something that you can grab, you can hold it, no. But it has its own value. You see, people subscribe, people pay monthly bills and whatnot, and they get to use the service that is provided by the telecommunication company. And the scholars have agreed that this kind of services is also considered as a category of asset, a class of asset from Sharia point of view. But what is important is that, you see, when we talk about what concern Sharia is that, I mean, an asset have to be something which is valuable, which is beneficial. All right, that's why personally I have my own view sometimes when it comes to certain type of cryptos, which is not backed by any type of asset, but it is, I mean, the value goes up and down merely based on speculation. All right, I have my own view. I respect the view of that is given by other scholars on this. You see, but for me, I mean, if it is just based on speculation, then I have some question mark when it comes to whether it is Sharia compliant or not. And I think that is the debate on another side of it. Okay. Now, before I conclude, I think one of the areas that I would like to share is also on the governance. Of course, when we have any Islamic instrument, it is important for us to have a solid governance process. Because when you talk about Sharia, right, you see, any instrument that we claim it is Sharia compliant, Sharia is the backbone of it. If you remove Sharia, then there is no difference between this instrument and also the conventional instrument. So that's why over and above the regulatory requirement, the legal requirement, you might have the taxation requirement. There is another requirement which we call as the Shariah requirement, meaning that perhaps, I mean, and this, of course, have its own processes. You see, as it is now, I would say, Alhamdulillah, in Malaysia, we have a very robust Shariah governance framework, whether in banking, in capital market, banking, takaful, capital market. I think we have developed, and we can experience, you see, take the experience from this framework that we have in order to develop a very robust. Because at the end of the day, if there is any question mark on the credibility of your product, then that is the end of it. I have seen quite a number of experience through my humble involvement outside Malaysia particularly, you see, where some institutions have to be closed down just because there is people question the credibility of the Shariah of the product that they are offering. You see, and also you can see that, I mean, there are a lot of, you know, hanky-panky sometimes that is happening in the market where perhaps some of you might have heard about the term fatwa shopping. You see, where people just go to anyone to get their product endorsed, whereas from the Sharia point of view, there might be certain question mark with regard to the process. So we need to get the expert who have the capability to assess, you see, the products that is being offered, so that, you see, it is important that we get the stamping from a qualified person. If you look into the Bank Negara Malaysia Sharia Governance Framework or Securities Commission Sharia Governance Framework, we can see that, you see, there are certain qualifications. Now, the question whether if you are offering a digital asset, whether do you need to appoint a Sharia committee, a Sharia advisor and whatnot, perhaps it all depends on the extensivity of your activity. Right? Perhaps if you ask me, I would say that it is important to have a Sharia expert that is advising you, because sometimes there might be certain peculiarity. When you talk about an issuer, for example, okay, what are the Sharia underlying concept that you want to use in issuing the RAMs, you see, or, you know, and how it is being used. So you need the expert opinion, you see, whether, I mean, this instrument, is it in line with Sharia or not. And then, but what is the model? You might have one Sharia advisor that is advising you. You might have Sharia committee consisting of at least 3 persons usually, you see, or you might want to engage a company to provide the Sharia certification and whatnot. Perhaps I think that is something depending on the extensivity of the activities that you are undertaking. So having a Sharia expert, of course, I mean, that is very important. Over and above that, of course, I mean, we have the Sharia audit process, we have the Sharia review process, Sharia audit process. You see, if the token, you see, maturity is in 5 years, 10 years, throughout the period, you see, you need some kind of supervision to ensure that there is no non-Sharia compliant event that is taking place throughout the period of the token. Okay, so I think this, in a nutshell, I mean, there is, I mean, some of the governance aspect that we need to take into account. And at the end of the day, I think what is important is that, you see, we have to ensure the credibility of whatever you know, kind of asset tokens that we are issuing, and we have to make sure that the Sharia aspect is taken care of. I will stop there for the time being. Perhaps if you have any question later on, I will be happy to address that. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullah. Thank you, Dr. Akram, for your detailed explanation on the topics. In fact, as you mentioned the guidelines, we are in the midst of finalizing the RAMS guideline or guidance notes, and inshallah we will be presenting to the SSC. Will be you also one of the member. All right. Okay. Now let us proceed with the next panel. Dr. C.K. Lee He will explain about the exchange, the digital asset exchange or the GreenX, the nature, the STO, and what are the benefits and hopefully the marketability of the products. Dr. CK?
Yeah, thank you, Encik Jafar. We granted a license by Labuan Financial Service Authority for our world first Shariah compliant ESG digital asset exchange. A lot of my friends from China and Hong Kong asking me, CK, myself is non-Muslim. Why I insist I want to establish the Sharia compliant ESG digital asset exchange. In fact, I'm studying about the whole world economy, the trend. In fact, over these 2 years of pandemic, right, we can start to realize something like, in fact, nowadays the economy conditions should focus in the more social economy. I should say it is a social value economy. Yeah. So a lot of financial mechanism, right? They're talking about, a traditional like banking system. They're talking about depositing based nature, like people deposit some money in the bank, then the bank use the money borrow out, right? They're talking about ROI, right? Then over these 20 years, I start to realize that only the Sharia compliant or Islamic finance, they start with the model base, right? They start with model base. So that is a very important and critical factor we should consider in a financial mechanism, especially nowadays, right? What is social value economy? In fact, is a value delivery process in a highly transparent mechanism. Right? That is we call social value economy. So how to make the social value economy successful? Right? We need a digital like fintech, right, to facilitate to deliver the value. What kind of value? Especially the social value, right? So in fact, I'm using the Sharia law or Sharia compliant regulation as our screening process in this model standard. Yeah, that's why we set up the Sharia ESG digital asset exchange, right? In fact, I did one research before a few days ago. You can see the whole world, the STO, security token offering, in fact, it become a new wave of a capital in a digital economy. It's a new wave of capital in fundraising, right? When you're looking for this traditional investment, we're talking about stocks or bonds or deposit with bank, right? There is a more in this traditional investment portfolio. Yeah, over 10 decades, or you can see the nature. They are more regulated, and of course, their behavior are more liquid, right? In order to representing the whole world traditional investment, we always use US capital market or stock markets to describe, okay, the whole trading volume. You can see in the year 2020, the whole trading volume in a US stock market is, we're talking about 121.3 trillion. And last year, they achieved about 142 trillion. Yeah, they growth about 17%. But over these 20 years, most of the investment and fund manager, they tend to allocate some of their wealth or some of their fund to allocate it in the, we call it alternative investment. Okay, typically, what is the alternative investment? We're talking about private equity, private debts, or hedge funds, real estate always is the most the largest portion in the so-called alternative investment, commodities, collectibles, and a structured product, right? What is the nature of this alternative investment? Always a less regulated by SEC, okay? Or some of it even unregulated by SEC. I'm talking about unregulated, and their nature always illiquid, yeah. But still, even their nature is quite not so liquid. They got at least 10 to 20% the wealth allocation, okay, always allocated in this alternative investment. Over 20 or 30 years, yeah, you can see every 10 years we are facing one financial crisis. So most of the fund manager, global fund manager, they try to allocate some of the asset in this alternative investment in order to mitigate or to reduce the volatile in a valuation, yeah. But you can see over the past 10 to 20 years, you can see crypto. It came out 20 years ago. They start to become the alternative investment in the global market. So we can see the growth of a centralized crypto exchange compared to year 2020. In year 2021, they hit about 689% growth. Typically, I think crypto representing always dominant by Bitcoin or those prominent cryptocurrency like Ethereum. Why that's a trend is so high growth? I think crypto slowly find a way in the application. They are more acceptable, even though they are still far behind if compared to a US security market, right? But the growth is quite obvious, okay? So, but the alternative investment still have to find a way to turn into the digital asset. Yeah, that's why because of the trend of the cryptocurrency. Yeah, we as an exchange, we are in the capital market, but in the digital world. Yeah, so we got the exchange. Our role is to turn the illiquid asset into the liquid asset. That is the major role of our exchange. That to facilitate most of the entrepreneur to able to raise fund, okay, using our exchange, so to develop their business or to further develop their corporate marketing or whatever corporate planning. Yeah. So they come to I call it asset and investment tokenization. You can see that what kind of asset can be tokenized? In fact, most of the alternative investment can be tokenized. Okay, in order to understand what is STO or security token offering, in fact, we have to know first of all what is security token. In fact, security token is a digitalization of valuable asset into the fragmented, digital certificate, which representing the ownership of right over that asset. That is what we call security token. And eventually, this digital cert, or we call it RAMs, or token, will be stored in a blockchain technology. That's simple, right? That's why there is a trend of so-called digital asset digitalization via tokenization. You can see the growth even higher. It's about 50 times. If compared to existing year, we got 310 billion. Then we're expecting the growth will achieve over 16 trillion. Yeah. That is the overall trend. So you can see more and more people, you try to digitalize or tokenize their investment or asset, right? Because the availability of the technology and advancement of technology like blockchain, like nowadays we got Web3 or whatever, cryptocurrency is quite matured, right? All these tools or instruments is give further advancement in our digital economy. Yeah, that is the study that I did it even 3 days ago. So we can see the whole trend. Why people intend to keep digital asset as a one of the portfolio investment. We also have a guesstimation about this trend will going to grow further in the coming 10 years or 20 years. I did a very simple study when I asked about the youngster, those below 40 years old. So when I asked them, hey, your parent try to transfer his house in his name, right? Like transfer some asset or as a wealth protection or wealth transfer to his son below 30 years old or 40 years old. They don't feel happy and they feel it's a burden. Then I asked them why. They say the house is too heavy. I cannot move and I can't guarantee myself will be stay in at the same place. I better to keep digital asset. You see, that's simple study or research. You can find the fact that that's why the coming young generation they have a very strong acceptance in this digital asset. Yeah. So from the entrepreneurial point of view, right? In fact, in the traditional financial mechanism, right? They may have a lot of restriction to restrict them to in terms of fundraising, right? But some of the young generation or young entrepreneur, they may have some asset. The asset means not only like what Dr. Akram just now mentioned about. It can be tangible, it can be intangible, right? We always emphasize substance. That is also I think the spirit of Sharia compliant, right? We need substance, right? So I've been done about over 50 companies throughout the Asia to bring 50 companies to US capital market. We did a lot of IPO. So one thing I realized that in US capital market, they always talk about value, right? Like a lot of people ask me, hey, why Tesla, even few years ago, far back to many years ago, they can list the company, right? They can list the company, but they're making a huge loss. So earlier capital market, like earlier exchange, we should facilitate that. We should identify clearly. A valuable company not means it's profitable. A profitable company not means it's valuable. Yeah. So in a financial mechanism or in our economic, the whole economic situation, right? We got 5 types of value, right? First of all, is asset value. Value is difficult to measure by using money. Whatever thing you can measure by using money, we call price. It's not value. Money cannot measure the value. You understand? So but asset is always measured by money. Like you got a piece of land, or how much is the land worth? Or 10 million. Why 10 million? Because you're actually using the 10 million cash or borrowing from bank to buy that land. That is about 10 million. Yeah. So what kind of value is bigger than the asset value? The second value in the economic condition is we call business value. Business value is simple. The formula to measure business value is simple. We call it revenue minus whatever cost. If you got profit, you got business value. If you don't have profit, means you don't have business value, right? That's simple. I personally do not agree about that. Business value is a measurement, using the measurement to measure company value. The third value should be the company value is even bigger than the business value, because the profitability is part of the company value only. Right? In a company, we got a combination of elements. First of all, you must have a direction and strategy. Secondly, you must have a team and execution. The third, you must have a strong culture and blending. Right? The fourth, you must have an innovation and creativity. And the fifth, you must have a business model, right, to do business with your stakeholder. Number six, you must think about the sustainability. Number seven, then we talk about the profit model. You can see that business value, we just use the profit to measure the value. But in the whole company, you can see that profit is part of the element, right? But nowadays, the problem of the measurement or valuation in the company, when we do in the traditional listing, it's difficult to measure because we always use the traditional method like a PE ratio, right? You times the profit, that is the market value, right? But as I say, value is difficult to be measured by using money term, right? So what we do in order to create more value, what kind of value is bigger than the company value? It should be the listed company value, because we are talking about market cap. The market cap also reflecting those value, including tangible and intangible. Yeah. So I always encourage most of our clients that after you list your company, better you have to create the fifth value. That is the most biggest one. I call it social value. That is why we explain why use a Tesla as an example. Like why Tesla? He make one car, he lose one car, but the value is keeping higher and higher. Yeah, because they are generating social value. So after this 10 years, over the past 10 years, we study in this value in our current economic situation. So we decided to plan to come up with the social value economy, but we supported by our digital asset exchange. Yeah, that's my sharing. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. CK, for your comprehensive explanation of values and how social values is above all the values that you mentioned just now. Now, let's now proceed with the issuer of RAMs, potential issuer of RAMs. We start with Puan Aqim. Maybe Puan Aqim, you can explain about your projects, your current projects, and how it ties with the RAMs issuances. Proceed, please. Thank you.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum. My name is Aqim. I'm an ACCA and MIE member. Something that left out just now.
Okay.
Okay, so I think all of you have seen the videos of my farm. So just an overall view. I am the owner of Cattle Queen Ranch. We are a cattle farm based in Kluang, Johor. So we are not the typical traditional farm. We try our best to engage with the communities. We adapt technologies. We are partnering with Huawei in terms of Shari'ah. We are the only and official partner of Jabatan Agama Islam Negeri Johor to conduct halal slaughter course currently. In terms of the environment aspect, we collaborate with WCF, Wildlife Conservation Society, to understand animal behavior and the ecosystem in our farm. So other than hosting cattle, goats, sheep, and cows, I also currently host 80 elephants in my farm. Yeah, so it's a lot of things that we do out of passion. And okay, so my 1,000 acre farm is saturated. And with COVID and the global warfare, the climate change, the Ministry of Agriculture, where I'm under with, has put an immense pressure for us to actually produce more food. So after talking few parties, we have been invited by the Pahang state government to expand our business model in Pahang. Okay. But what happened is, with the conventional method of raising funds, it is very difficult to put price tag on the values that we do. Like CK said, how can I put a price on homing 80 elephants? How can I put a price on being diligently Shari'ah compliant when I've heard some officers say, hey, you don't have to do this, but we want to do it, out of Makasih Shari'ah. So we find that this ramps comes at a precise moment in time when SMEs like me can focus with what we do. So in the conventional way of raising funds, farmers are often being torn apart, whether you put your land as collateral, and without the regulations, we normally lose our lands. We are put under pressure getting funders who does not understand the dynamics of agriculture, especially with the global climate change and whatnot. So, and in Malaysia, agriculture is always, if you want to do agriculture, you have to be entrepreneur. So it's actually two separate things. We are not allowed to focus to do what we do best. And recent study shows that, the numbers of farmers in the world has reduced from 40% to 26%. So I'm losing out. With STO, you guys have provided me, Labuan and CK, GreenPro has provided me to actually focus on what I do best, which is farming. In the farming sector, in Malaysia typically, we have a lot of good institutes. We have MARDI, we have UPM, we have IVM, we have IPA. All these institutes produce lots of students, technical level, vocational level, diploma, master level. But every time these students come to my farm to do internship, I always ask them, what do you expect? Because if you expect to be a manager, because you have a master's, or you want to be a supervisor, or by all this conventional ranking, as you see, that can never happen in the agricultural sector in Malaysia unless the industry makes serious change. In order for us to make that serious change, we need capital funding that understands that it needs an industrial transformation. So this funding allows us, as I said, to focus on what we do and let us grow how it should have been grown many years ago. People, farmers like me, companies like me can use these funds to actually focus on getting the right partners who understand the risk appetite of this industry, share knowledge, transfer technology, and we can train younger generations to actually come back and serve the agricultural industry. And we can just focus on producing food instead of trying to get collateral for the banks, trying to communicate in languages that people normally shut their doors for us. So basically, I think this comes at the right time. And with ESG and blockchain, it actually simplifies our work in terms of getting everything embedded in the smart contract.
Yes.
So again, that simplifies our work to allow us to focus and hopefully create better change in the industry in the future.
All right.
Okay.
Very concise
Yeah,
and
so
precise.
basically that's it.
Thank you very much, Puan Aqim.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I'm sure there will be Q&A later. Thank you very much. Next will be Mr. Greg Miller. Do you want to have a presentation? Yeah, please proceed. Slides.
Salam alaikum. E oku rangatira mihi mai kia mātou katoa. Kua tai mai nei I tēnei rā. Kaupapa, tautoko, the mahi o putia of CK's exchange in Labuan. It's very exciting. Greetings to you all. My name is Greg Miller. I've come here from Aotearoa, New Zealand at an invitation from CK, and thank you, Nick and Jaffa, for having us and my panellists. It's great to be here with you today. What I said to you in our indigenous tongue, Māori, Te Reo Māori, was my esteemed superiors, I'm delighted to be here with you today to hear about the financial exchange that's been set up in Labuan and how grateful we are to be part of that. What I want to do for you is just explain from a global exporter's perspective how something so unique as an asset-based digital tokenization works for a business like ours. But we are a food provider to the world as a nation and as a company, but we're also looking to raise capital, and the tokenization of asset-backed currency for us is a real thing. I looked at the non-fungibles for years and watched this sort of mythical thing dance around, and we saw the downward decline of some of that during COVID. But a truly asset-based tokenization to me is the future. And for us, seeing what we are is emerging before us is fantastic. Just something to explain. The Shariah compliance in our culture, we call tikanga. And for us as Māori New Zealanders, tikanga to us is a way of life. So seeing and hearing the Shariah compliance, the resonation for us is real. It's the way we run our business socially and the way we run our communities. And seeing that alignment with this exchange, TK, is very exciting. But what I thought I'd like to do is just say, my name's Greg Miller. I'm the chairman of ASPAC Capital. I've had 36 years as a logistician working across the world, but largely across the ASEAN market and having an office here in KL over the years as well. And an entrepreneur and a primary industry sector participant, I want to utilize my skills to bring a supply chain, value chain, blockchain component to our company to work alongside the ecosystem that GreenPro is establishing. Just something for you to know, the global race for protein is on. And as a nation that is big on protein exports, in fact, it's the largest piece of our country's GDP, we have visits every day from customers all around the world wanting to procure protein. And the supply chain, the value chains, and the blockchain's emergence over the years, as that has changed, is really quite important. The current global population, sitting around 7.9 billion, is expecting to grow to 9.8 billion by 2050. The challenges for us is how do we produce the food that's required to feed that population over the next few years. The reality is that we need to produce enough food for that size population that is greater than the last 10,000 years of food production combined. And what we know is that yesterday's process-driven technologies and traditional supply chains cannot solve tomorrow's problems. And I want to link blockchain to the exchange into business. Timing and opportunity, when those two things in the axis crosses, great things can happen. And quite often, CK and I have talked about sometimes you're ahead of your time with your innovation, but other times you're right on time. And I believe that this digitization of tokens around assets is perfectly on time. As an industrialist, I fully support and engage the new Labuan exchange and the platform for integration that allows the social values of organisation along profitability to be understood, and also the Shariah compliance for the Muslim marketplace. Let me tell you why. The future of digital integration with modern supply chains is all about tech. Over the last 3 decades, if you take the 90s, for instance, most supply chain providers were integrated with partners overseas, and you never shared technology, you shared services. Then came the value chain discussion. The value chain discussion became the 2000s, where you shared APIs and you built tech platforms along your physical asset movement of goods. And proficiency was what it was all about. But then companies like Toll and Maersk emerged, and they grew an ability to take their own products to market across different jurisdictions road, rail, sea and air. And what they were able to do was bring a tech platform across the physical asset. What blockchain's done is allowed us to go to the agency arrangement again, but with a tech strategy. So we can partner with near anybody so long as we have a technical capability to join with them and share information and values. But the single offering to market is the challenge. One of the big things in supply chain that you must always look at, and with capitalisation of anything, is the risk mitigation. So what does that mean? So thinking about applicability, cross-border trade in different jurisdictions has many risks in many forms. The capital security aspect is actually the largest. So you invest in something and you've got to know that you've got security on the asset, security on the use of that capital. This exchange provides that. It brings in near any investor for a single object or multiple objects through a certain channel, and to a company like us, that's critical, and a system that can provide many things. I call it the layer cake effect. And the way the layer cake effect is something happens above and below every single thing in your supply chain, and you've got to think through that effect on your business. That means that you need to track all aspects of your activity across your value chain. You need to look at way the system is customized at the outset to ensure that the layer cake of things that you're going to touch aligns and enjoins. You've got to be able to set gateways and standards along that value chain, supply chain, blockchain to ensure that the measurability that you're seeking is exactly what you set out to do. Blockchain provides that. So best use of capital, location of capital, everything from goods procured, linked to terms of trade, linked to bank guarantees, SPLCs, all the components of finance can come through the development on the relationship with that exchange. That also links under the layer cake what you hang off of what you're tracing. So if you're tracing an asset across the globe as it moves, you can track the documentation, it's essential for customs, but you also can track the cost, the commercial documentation, and all of the components around global trade. We say we want to link all of our customers and suppliers, imports and exports as one. Some of the rules of reporting are quite important. And when I look and listen to CK around the values that underpin the exchange and the potential for investment, we look at the other side of our equation and say, whether it's the origin of way bills all the way through to order placement, all the way through to the digital approach to asset moving or data moving, customs clearance, arrival data, all of that stuff can be tracked. And for an investor coming through that platform of GreenPro, looking at a business that has blockchain, linked to a business that has blockchain, will give significant confidence to any investor group. Supply chain integration. So what do we learn from that? What we've learned from that is that by integrating with an exchange and an investor and a performance of an exporter across a global supply chain, cost models, margin models, inventory capital are all things that you need to know. Very few companies actually measure the cost of inventory in their entire supply chain. And it's a critical thing these days. Like as we've seen with the food security challenges with the Ukrainian war, the grain supply into Europe has virtually diminished. And by virtue of that, the animals that rely on that grain subsidised by their governments are going down in number. The milk production, for instance, out of those animals is going up in cost. And traceability of margins across blockchain is critical. So for us, we see it as a fundamental. What you also get from the blockchain traceability is understanding your net profitability, because you're measuring things all the way along the supply chain to the end point. It's essential that you're able to predict your market capitalisation. If we set a value on our assets for our animals, for instance, we would like to predict the value of those assets in future years from our start point. Therefore, the shareholder has an opportunity to see where value will arrive. So our designed best outcome is to find blockchain transparency across capital security and traceabilities that suit the investor. Some key benefits. If you start predicting the accuracy of the science you've created with measurement, you start determining business outcomes. And that's one thing I really liked about the exchange, is understanding that it's not for every company, but for a lot of companies it's perfect with the social change we're going through. Whether it's Shari'ah compliance or tikanga, you can measure all of that behaviour. The single largest benefits are those social benefits actually. Whether it's halal or Shari'ah compliance, the way you run your blockchain gives that visibility for licenses, documents, and visibility that's aligned to your accreditations. For us, it's about best use of capital. Physical supply chain being underway, a new wave of capital that's fully digitised is critical. The capital requirements make it all possible for us to grow our businesses. The Shari'ah value chain to us is something that we live and breathe by as tikanga compliant New Zealanders. So how does it relate to Aspect Capital? We're a business that owns farms, owns livestock, owns processing centres, factories, runs transport, runs shipment, arrival to destination, has partners offshore, has processing facilities offshore, and it's interesting looking at the characteristics of Labuan that would certainly suit us for ASEAN location and supply, because now there's an exchange. From the exchange comes banking and insurance and the things you've heard about. Shipments to market, wholesale supply, and of course, profitable retail trade. Now we're a vertical. That's a great supply point. We want to integrate and join and work with GreenPro to develop tokenization of our asset base. And actually the whole game is about creating value for the shareholder group, our funders, our investors that support the halal economy, the IP owners on our farms, our livestock, our machinery, our shipping partners, our globally vertigrated business, all under the same digital blockchain. And from this, we know where we're going, and we know the things that we need to support. So thank you for listening. I'm grateful to be here. Nick, Jaffa, TK, thank you very much. Kia ora.
All right, thank you, Greg. Thank you very much. I'm sure there will be questions. Now, the next phase is that basically we open the floor. Any questions that you want to ask, please do it. So, just mention your organization you come from. Any questions from the floor?
Good afternoon to the distinguished panelists. My name is Joseph. I'm from Joseph and Company. I just want to find out how does the social impact of the Islamic banking will have in a situation where the conventional banks are hiking up the rates. Are the Islamic funding is going to do likewise, or are they going to stick to the social norms? So how are you going to compete in a situation like this when the rates are poised to go up at a continuous fort? Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph, for the question. Yes, perhaps you see, I think one of the reality that we have on the ground when it comes to pricing, okay, I mean there are similarities between how we price our product in conventional and how it is being priced in Islamic. I think that is where you don't find that much different. You see, except that, I mean, there are certain, I would say, values or principles in Shariah, you see, in which in conventional you can do certain things but you cannot do in Shariah. I take for example, you see, during the moratorium that we have during the pandemic, right? I mean, when the banks, for example, give moratorium for 6 months to the client, okay, of course, I mean, whatever cost of these 6 months, they will embed it, right? I mean, in the following period, and there is a compounding element in it. But when it comes to Shariah, in fact, this is one of the decisions that has been taken by the Shariah Advisory Council of Bank Negara. We disallow the compounding element. You see, when you calculate the selling price, or how are you going to give rebate mechanism to the client. So these are some of the examples that I can give you to you. But at the end of the day, I always mention that, you see, in terms of benchmark, how we price our product in Islamic and conventional, it is no different. You see, I mean, this is again, it is the market force that determine the pricing. Personally, I would say that perhaps at one time when we have substantial share of Islamic in the market, perhaps there definitely you see the social element and the, you know, how we assist people and whatnot elements will be embedded within the price mechanism, but that perhaps might come at a later stage. Hope I address your concern. Thank you.
My name is John Mallory. One of the big advantages that's been touted as tokenization and blockchain technology is security because of transparency. And yet, some of the biggest theft of any banks in the last few years have been of digital currency. So how do you reconcile the security of blockchain technology with billions being transferred or disappeared, literally, with one digital company actually going broke over it, in fact, two of them, and big one. Anybody want to take that off? There seems to be some kind of dichotomy there, or discrepancy. Or maybe is it that blockchain technology is not as, which underline basically all the stuff you're talking about, still some work in progress. Anybody like to comment on that?
I'll try to address that. You see, from my point of view, you see, correct me if I'm wrong. You see, when we talk about the digital currency of whether it is central bank digital currency, you see, I mean, it is based on, for me, if I understand it correctly, there is no difference between the paper money and also the digital currency, except that it is in a different form. And there are certain bases on how central bank issue these currencies. All right. Now, when we talk about tokens, okay, as you have seen in the examples, I mean, these tokens are based on real economic activities on the ground, right? So when it is based on real economic activities on the ground, my assumption is that, you see, the value that is created is a real value, meaning that when the investor get a return out of the investment that they have put in the digital asset, then it will reflect, you see, whatever underlying that is being used in the digital asset, in the investment in the investment in the tokens. Okay, so I hope, you know, I mean, have any further question, then please.
Yeah, I've got no dispute of the fact that the underlying asset is still there, except that if you deal across borders, like for example investment in China or Russia or anywhere else around the world where you have cross border, how do you, particularly if the legal system in a country is not clearly defined or understood or have different values, how do you define that you're actually the owner of that ultimate asset or share in that asset if someone else from somewhere else around the world is claiming that thing because the title effectively, quote unquote, has disappeared? Or maybe that's the wrong forum. We should address that to lawyers. Or international lawyers, or whatever.
You're talking about the digital asset. It's, I mean, the CDCs, I mean, central bank digital currency,
CBDC.
Are you talking about that? Because if you're talking about the central bank digital currency, then definitely there will be a mechanism to identify. I mean, they will be the KYC and whatnot. There is no issue on that.
No, I'm not talking about central banks.
Okay.
I mean, some central bank, I think the Bank of China and some other banks, in fact, Salvador, the countries moved to digital currency as well. So obviously the central bank is involved as well. But I'm talking about basically the digital currency is mostly unregulated. It's out there, you know, there is no central bank. That has been the problem, isn't it, if you think about that?
Yeah.
Because of no. And so you think you own something, but you don't. You know, at the end of the day, someone else has, you know, your title, quote unquote, has disappeared. And so if an economy needs to develop, there must be some certainty.
Yes.
You know, people around the world migrate to country with certainty. Correct? And that's why people are talking, whatever you like, the US or not, where you got certainty of title, then you can count. If you don't, you don't.
John, your point's not lost, because part of our attraction to this digital platform is its asset back. And we want our investors, shareholders, to know there is something truly tangible not an NFT that floats through the vaporware, that has a valuation created by somebody who was probably more akin to going to a casino, without being rude. But the thing is, having an asset-backed economy is the future. There is a bit of a race on right now around digitisation that's asset-backed by gold and other true currencies that provide stability. And when I learned from my colleague Jim about CK's vision, it became really apparent to me, wanting to tokenise our assets, that this was a channel that takes away a large chunk of that risk and mitigates the long-run investment returns. Like if you're in business like we are, you're in business actually to stay in business. You're not in business to fail. So you have to partner with enterprises that are similar to that. And the tokenization and digital platform being delivered here is around truly asset-backed investment, which takes away a lot of risk. Nothing's fallible, but takes away a lot of risk.
Okay, if I'm not mistaken, there will be smart contracts that is ingrained in the basically the exchange, specifying the assets and all the contracts relevant. Is it true?
Yeah, we are talking about, if we are talking about asset-backed token,
Yes.
right? That is the principle that you will have embedded the smart contract that to fulfill the condition. In fact, asset-backed token, we also call it as asset digitalization. In fact, just now I also mentioned that we got few types of the value, right? We are using the asset value, right? To straight away, we do the digitalization, become the token. I think John, just now you mentioned about you're more focusing on this digital currency. Is a currency, right? We are talking about the token is capital nature, right? So asset-backed token is a very effective and convincing token in the fundraising, because of course at least they got asset back, right? So the principle of STO, asset-backed token, means that no matter how your token have been assured, the value have been assured with that at least the asset value, right? Then is the token can be appreciated in value or fluctuated. It depends on what the fund proceed, right? The use of proceed. You raise from capital, you develop your business, okay? So technically, the token should appreciate, right? But the appreciate is not based on the principle of currency. It's based on the principle of the business development, and you derive more value, yeah? A lot of let me explain in a layman term, right? In the financial market, right? In the financial market, even conventional financial market, we got two types of market. One is, we call it money market, right? What is money market? It's like a money changer or leasing, hire purchase. All these are in the money market. So in the traditional finance mechanism, we also got a capital market, right? Like exchange, right? You raise fund via IPO. So in fact, we have come into the digital world nowadays, right? In the digital world, we also have money market. What is money market? Like finance, they are also the cryptocurrency exchange. They are considered money market. Our exchange are in the digital world capital market, right? We are dealing with that. So in terms of currency, money market in currency, like you just imagine, like traditional, our US foreign exchange, if compared to ringgit, right? It still have fluctuation, right? Especially now, recently, right? So in a money market in digital world, we got Bitcoin, we got Ethereum, right? They're still fluctuated, but they are backed by nothing. Just that Why they appreciate in value? Because more and more people accepted that become the currency, but in virtual world, right? In fact, that drive the liquidity. So in order to strengthen your currency, right, you need more liquidity. Like US dollar, why they still considered a very strong currency, yeah. But currency, when we talk about currency, I think that the fundamental are based on the liquidity and the market demand, right? But in the capital world, we have a fundamental to support it. That's called asset value. Yeah, I hope that I can, to a certain extent, I can address your question.
All right, so once.
Hi, my name is Farah. I'm from Fusang Digital Exchange. I'd like to congratulate Dr. Lee on joining the 134 Club. We're part of the club as well at Fusang. Congratulations on Aqim and Greg. This move towards tokenization is fantastic. I'm a keen believer, but I'm very interested to try and understand what asset quality, to go back to your point earlier, the kind of quality of assets that you're looking at, what the Sharia filter will be for that asset necessarily, and how you're looking to tokenize it and fractionalize it, and the kind of market that you're looking to venture into with this fractionalized asset.
Yes, very nice to meet you. In our country, we have the Islamic Council that does the certification on Shariah and halal Islamic fundamentals that your business needs to comply by. So we tick that box because we run our business socially right. You know, following the right pathway is what we believe in. The ESG compliance, environmental rules in New Zealand are very high because our whole nation survives on agricultural exports. We have many government departments monitoring the entire environmental impact of your business. The social side of business is becoming more and more important, and we have our own value sets for that are Sharia aligned, tikanga aligned. And governance, we have strong governance. So on that aspect of things, I think we're pretty well covered and aligned to the ecosystem provided from the new exchange here. In terms of asset value, our assets have the layer cake value effect that CK was talking about. You have an asset purchase, an asset production, an asset outcome, and economics related to farming assets on farms and cows and milk production. But there's another value, and that's the long run value. And that's where we believe a tokenization of those physical assets could help us grow. The food security side of it, or the security of food, which I call it, because that's actually what it is. Nations are out to secure their food deficiencies. So if we take Malaysia, I think it produces about 6% of its milk consumption. So it's got a 94% deficit. So where do you as a country procure that? How do you procure that? And are the values of that procurement aligned to your national beliefs? And that's where the combination with, I think, as an export-driven company and an import-driven nation, a market or an exchange to allow us to raise capital from our customers is quite an important and unique thing. So it's linking the ecosystem components to derive value. We have a vision, and that is that a Malaysian customer who's drinking our milk that's actually New Zealand fresh milk, not UHT, not some fabricated, falsely marketed imposter, because that's what happens, but a truly New Zealand fresh milk, can actually come through our digital system and see the origin and the location of that animal that's produced that product that they're consuming. That's entirely possible. And we actually have the ability to do that because we track all of our animals all of the time, where they are physically and what they're consuming and the bionutrients that they absorb that makes them compliant to your market. And we think that the future is the blockchain capability wrapped around our business gives that visibility to the consumer, which is actually the end game, getting as close to the consumer as possible. So it's a mixture of, you know, location, asset, values, alignment to get us to market. I hope that answers your question.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Suhaimi. I've got a speed-fire question, so it's up to our panelists to answer. Number one, I think I would like to address to Aqim. very interesting how you're able to grow your business, and when you compare to NPC, or in quotes, Cowgate, they fail in a big way. So what's the differentiation
Sorry,
factor?
can you just put the mic?
Oh, sorry. What's the differentiation factor here that you will be successful and not the NPC, or what is commonly called, in quotes, Cowgate? That's number one. Number two, I will address to my professor here on WAF. I'm sure there will be many people here will be talking about WAF now, or Waqaf. When we talk about Waqaf, I believe, I subscribe to this belief that there should not be any principal, depreciation. So whatever you put in, be it land assets or cash assets, so can that be, is that allowable if your assets, very big cash, starts to depreciate or diminish? And number two, Prof, can you do tokenization on debts, like what Chagamas is doing? So can we do it on personal loan, for example? Those are smaller loans and car loans and things like that. If that's allowable, that's fantastic. Then, you know, banks can unload their personal loans and so on to tokenization. My one final question, if I'm allowed to do that. Now, I suspect, I presume IBFC is a regulator here for tokenization,
Labuan,
right?
yeah.
And then you have multiple exchange, and Dr. CK is one of them.
Yeah.
There could be many more around. Now, I worry about, you know, that kind of distributed exchange, because one thing, I'm not sure whether they have enough reserve or statutory requirements, because you need to have substantial requirements, because when you do an exchange, there's money flow. You know, and who knows, the money may not be, you're not seen after you transact.
Yes.
And that relates to liquidity as well. I'm sure as an investor, you want liquidity. And somebody must be the market player to allow for liquidity to take place, especially from the very beginning. My final thing on direct to CK, I think you cannot rely wholly on valuation. Okay, and why I say this is this. Now, private equity is seen as a pyramid scheme. And I think you know very well. So you cannot just see valuation as the only way and the way to move forward, because look at what private equity is doing. They just push up their value, you know, to the benefit of the earlier, you know, investors. Thank you.
All right. There are many questions. Maybe we start with Aqim.
Assalamualaikum. Okay, you're referring to NFC, is it? Okay. I know it's going to come up. Okay. All right. First of all, I would like to say something that is very blatant. The Ministry of Agriculture has always been pushing forward agendas like feedlotting. You know, it's always about trading. It is always an idea of if we bring more creates more. And the people who sit on the NFC board are normally, I would say, professors, you know, academicians. They are not the people on the ground. I deal with this kementerian because I sit under the kementerian. I am part of the Modern Agriculture Project, started in 2005. I've been with the project ever since. And it's always been a debacle. When we say you should do things in a sustainable way, but they have a different policy to it. So this Pahang project is actually something very dynamic from the Pahang state of government. When they approached me, they said, hey, you know, why don't you bring more cattle? I said, no. The problem with cattle production in Malaysia, why we are so under a lot of stress, is because the animal feed is so expensive. The feed comes from, most of the feed components are actually commodity based, and it is subjected to commodity prices. So I told them, I said, you know what? We conventional, not to say conventional, we small time farmers, we actually uses oil palm fronds as feed for the cattle. It has its issues, but we do it, and we do it aggressive. We use it aggressively in our own way. And I said, you know what? Malaysia, we are the largest palm oil producers, yet we are not tapping into this. The reason is because the MPOB sits on top. So I said, as long as you push MPOB first, palm oil first, food security second, you can never solve the beef problem in Malaysia. So we are very unfortunate that the dynamics of Pahang state offices, they give us a chance, so they give us a 4,000 acre land. They say that you are allowed to use this land to actually to plant your own palm fronds, to plant your own palm oil, so that we can produce our own animal feed using palm fronds. That will help us to reduce the animal feed and breed good animals. When I say breed good animals, commercially, normally a cattle will have a 15 years lifespan, right? Commercially, they will say you should cull it by the age of 6 or 7 because they are not very productive. But my track record, I have an 11-year-old cow that is still producing. The reason why they are producing is because the way we take care of them, the food, the environment, it is very healthy and safe for the animals to continue to live and nurture their offsprings. So with the cost being dragged low, with the focus on with this quality of life, and I emphasize on producing KK breed, which is a local breed, or now there's a newer version, they call it KK Elite, will actually solve a lot of problems. Again, coming back to the policies of the government, they always say, you know what, bring breeds from overseas. We tried it for the last 20, 30, 40 years. It never worked. The ones that survive, the KK Elite. The KK. Now they have upgraded, they call it the KK Elite. It's bigger in size. So I said, let's solve the two most fundamental problems, animal feed, correct breed, then you push forward. Again, all these things can only be successful if you do it the right way. When I say the right way, meaning that it has to be a sustainable way. You cannot, the state government allows us to do a lot of things our way, whereby we have pushed feedlotting aside. JPV, they talk to a lot of farmers to do feedlotting, but it's actually not healthy for the animals. It brings a lot of stress to the animals. We've seen a lot of miscarriage by female cows by feedlotting. So I said, let's not do it. So we're going to take up integrated farming. That's very natural for the animals. Again, coming to the animal feed, good breed, and that will solve basic of the problems. So with this STO, one, we solve the animal feed not just for us, but we're actually going to produce feed for other cattle farmers. And with good breed, we can allow other farmers to excel. Our way, we are from farmers to farmers. It's not from the government policies to another to the farmers. You know, let farmers help farmers. So we have the feed factory, we have the good breed, and later on we can also now train farmers on adapting technologies. Because let's face it, farmers in Malaysia, there are two types now. One is the family-based, you know, it's family-based, they are still old school, but they want to continue what they want to do. They want to use technology, but they just don't know how. So we have to repack technology and communicate and train them in a way they can understand. So this is a challenge. There are second type of farmers that's emerging right now is professionals. And I've seen, you know, architects, engineers, leaving their careers, joining the agriculture industry. So they have an idea how certain things can, which is good because they provide an insight, an input that we never realized before. So it's also about how do we communicate with them and trying to somehow work together to enhance our industry. So these are the things that we can focus on with this STO, the feed factory, the good breed, and adapting technologies, communicating with professionals to help the first generation, the second generation farmer. And with this, it will change the entire industry. It is so unfortunate that this has to come from a small industry player, but this is the right way. We know, we've tested it, and we know it's going to work. Because I'm a farmer, I'm a slaughter person, I know the issues and the problems there. Basically, does that answer you?
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. So, Datuk Akram, maybe regarding the wakaf and also on the receivables, can we tokenize them?
Okay, I'll start with the debt or receivables. Actually, the problem with debt from Shariah point of view is that you cannot sell it at premium or discount. I think that is the main issue, and I think that is the view that I subscribe. You see, so even if you tokenize, I mean, you cannot create value out of it. So going back to the basic, I would say, principles of buying and selling debt from the Sharia point of view. Okay, when you talk about wakaf, actually wakaf, you mentioned about the value depreciating. Actually, the value may depreciate or appreciate. You see, the basic of wakaf is that in Arabic they call it habsul asal, meaning that the principle have to be preserved. Let's say if you have a building, for example, the value of the building might go up, might go down, right? You see, but the building have to be intact. You cannot sell it. What you can do is that you can rent it out and then get the rental, and then that rental you can use it for whatever charitable purpose. Now, I was just thinking aloud how we can integrate wakaf in the mechanism of Islamic digital asset. Yes, I would say that the concept itself can be integrated. You see, particularly if we can come up with a mechanism, you see, to preserve, you see, the value, not the value of the asset, to preserve the asset itself. I give you an example, like, you see what we are doing in PNB right now. You see, those people who are buying the units, right? So we have started the initiative for them to give their units as wakaf. So this unit that is given as wakaf, I mean, we classify it as wakaf units. It is being invested just like any other asset or any other units, but then the return from these portions is given as charitable, and we preserve, you see, whatever number of units that is being given as wakaf, that is being preserved, and it will continue even after the person pass away. It will continue. So I mean, and the charitable, you know, the jariyah, it will continue. So perhaps, I mean, we can think about integrating wakaf in the digital asset as well. Allahu Alam.
Well, in terms of the exchanges in Labuan, we just don't give anybody to any Tom, Dick and Harry, right? It has to be a proper stringent for we give license profit, and this is our centralized exchange. Therefore, we will monitor them regularly. They have to give reports in terms of the activities to our side. We'll do supervisions, regular supervisions, to ensure proper operation of the exchanges. But we hear you. We have to make sure the quality of the exchanges is being procured. Yeah, thank you. And is there any other questions that you ask? We have one last question. Sorry. Okay, one last question.
Jafar, can I just ask a
Sure.
little bit more?
Sure.
One more thing, sir. This project is regulated and being monitored. I got blockchain all over to spy on me. So it will work. So why don't you pick up a token and follow my progress?
All right. Last question. Yes.
Okay. Assalamualaikum and good afternoon to all the distinguished panelists.
Yes.
I'm Naimi from Central Bank of Malaysia. I've got two questions. The first one is, I just want to have some feel in terms of the extent of market liquidity of this token. Probably we can take example from the one that issued by Aqim. I mean, if I could have a feel in terms of what is the daily trading volume. And then my second question is related to in the case of insolvency, should the issuer subject to liquidation, would the investor of the token would have the same legal right compared to the traditional equity investor? Thank you.
Let me answer the question.
Yeah.
Your last question to me as well. Right? You see, as just now you mentioned, you're right. In terms of investment in private equity, right? We cannot rely on their so-called valuation. Okay, For those investment not under securitization, we call valuation. For those investment already securitized, right? I mean, publicly traded. That is we call market cap. That is the liquidity to make up the market cap. So of course, market cap is always more convincing than the valuation, because why private equity, right? The valuation is not so convincing because it's just only agreed by a small group of people, not large enough in terms of investor pool, right? To answer your question just now, you say the token, okay, the fundamental of the SEO, always before you issue the token, right? The fundamental, you must have an underlying asset to back it up. Yeah. So of course, throughout the due diligence by our tax listing sponsor, right, they have to make sure the underlying asset will back up the token. And secondly, we will have make sure all the asset are the custodian the enforceability are valid, right? Of course, we involve some legal team, even including the legal third party legal advice, right? To come up with the maybe legal opinion about the asset custodian enforceability. Yeah, in the case of insolvency, right? The token holder have a right, they have the ownership of the right over the asset. Yeah, that's why throughout the whole STO process, right, the area we should cover, okay? In fact, our tax listing sponsor, they got two parts of the due diligence is quite crucial. One, whether the asset exists or not. Second, is an asset worth that value or not? Yeah. So that is the so-called the protection layer for the token investor. Yeah.
CK, in terms of the liquidity, I think that's the question they asked. I think Aqim, we have not issued yet.
Yeah,
we are in the process, in the pipeline.
Not
of
issued
issuing yet. But previous tokens that you have done, what's the liquidity like? I mean, is it?
In fact, GreenPro, we are running one exchange in Philippines under CISA 4 years ago. Of course, I should consider that the liquidity is not much if compared to the US, the stock market, all this, right? Yeah. But I think there's always a challenge in terms of liquidity for every exchange, including our traditional exchange, right? One thing, we got more than 10 listed clients in our exchange existing in Philippines, and one of the clients is they are US based. They are the world's largest STO issuer. We call it TNT. They use a 6 billion gold reserve back. So I asked them why. Because they already got the approval from US SEC to grant them the approval in this IPO to raise about over 100 million US dollar. But why finally they still choose us as a platform to list here? Because they try to avoid some unfair situation, right? You see, in US the liquidity is quite high. Okay, the world top highest liquidity market. But what makes this liquidity come out? Of course, part of it is due to the maybe short selling, all this. You understand? No? That's why this issuer they still prefer to list in our exchange, even though our liquidity is low. But averagely, in our exchange in Philippines, averagely we got 10 clients. Averagely, they raise about 10 million US dollar. Okay. Yeah, that's good enough for them to start up something. Yeah.
Per issuer.
Per issuer.
Per issuer.
Yeah.
All right. Actually, there is a request from DG. One more question. Do you have any questions? Or? Oh, I'm sorry. Any more questions?
Lizan.
Izan.
I just need to recap. There was a question on liquidity where it is addressing market making as well as the strength of the exchange, which is very, very crucial for any exchanges. Perhaps we could revisit that and have some answers from the panelists. Thank you.
Market making.
Hi. As an exchange operator, right? Suppose we should stand in a very neutral position. We should not involve in this market making, right? In fact, the liquidity of the issuer is mostly we always call it as a marketing, right? It's a marketing. But of course, there are two ways. They got two ways to increase or to enhance the liquidity of every issuer. First of all, we have to select the right company to do the tokenization, the right issuer. Of course, we strongly believe that as strong as we are chosen some issuer that towards the ESG or Shariah compliant that generate a social value, okay, then more and more investors, even including some retail investors, they are going to take up or to invest in the token, because when you talk about social value, most of the social value are related to the personal, right? They become the part of the element in this liquidity enhancement. And secondly, of course, we as an exchange, we have to go outside to promote, right? Like today, right? We have to, every exchange must have a starting point, right? But we can see that it's the right timing now because of the whole trend, yeah. In fact, luckily we are Hong Kong based, so I just over the past 10 years, right? The whole Asia, okay, there's just still lack of some exchange, right? In terms of digital asset tokenization. In fact, we invested in one of the Philippine stock exchange. It's also called a digital asset exchange, right? That is a good starting point for us, but I don't think it's good enough, because that one we are focused in this. We are focused in this traditional way in the market making, right? That's why we choose Labuan. Okay, we choose Labuan as a platform for us to do the even more upgraded and more acceptable by widen community to set up this Shariah compliant ESG digital asset exchange here, and that is our first step. Okay, of course, after this month, we have a marketing campaign outside Malaysia. Like Director General of Labuan asked me how to do the marketing. Of course, we are subject to the pandemic restriction. I just have been informed that now Hong Kong not require any quarantine requirement, so I can fly over back to Hong Kong to promote it. Yeah, so in fact, our exchange also quite focused in this to get issuer outside Malaysia, and of course investor outside Malaysia. That's why we bring Golden Cow as our first issuer in our exchange. And of course, we also encourage, like Malaysia is a good gateway to the whole ASEAN, right? So we also encourage the investor from global level outside Malaysia to invest in the issuer in Malaysia that will bring more FDI into our country. Yeah.
All right.
Can I make a comment on the liquidity?
Yes.
Just from, I guess, a customer of the exchanges perspective, when I looked at other exchanges around the world, liquidity is an essential thing to drive value, no question. But the spikiness of the NFT or the tokenization world can be hard on an asset owner if you are putting your assets up. The expectations can be too high and unrealistic, and they can be, so spiky because they're speculative. Having a truly asset-backed, digitized platform as an exchange that truly values your assets and assists you in the capital raising based on genuine returns aligns with our sector. We're a 160-year-old sector in our country producing dairy exports, and our industries are long run, but the returns security is there when it's truly asset backed, so liquidity has more surety. If you're looking at a speculative investment of a fungible something, non-fungible something, you've got to take the highs and lows of that. This platform that CK and GreenPro are putting together aligns with our values, Shari'ah tikanga, but it also aligns with a long run earn. And when I said before that the opportunity between timing and opportunity access is meeting, that will drive liquidity, because we're in a position where the food supplements subsidised by many governments around the world versus grasslands, so we don't have supplements as much, a small fraction, because our land produces the feed. We are arriving in market at the lowest cost, and therefore the long run benefit of a traditional business entering a platform drives its own liquidity. It won't be as spiky, it'll be long run benefit, but that's actually what we want, what we're seeking. Our liquidity is more stable actually.
Okay. I think the panelists, you guys can, if you have more questions, we can always deal it after this event. So I think that concludes this event. So give a hand again to the learned